Hey everybody, it's Paul from Alexandria Knife Sharpening and Laser Engraving. One of the members asked for this, and it's been something that's come up a bunch of times before, so I think it's worth doing, and I feel bad when people buy the wrong thing sometimes. So I'm going to do just a quick little introduction to the radial discs. I'm going to show you all the different kinds, how they work, how they go on the mandrels, because that seems to be one of the biggest points of confusion. I'm going to update you on the mandrels that we made, how that's going, and the testing, and let's get started. So here should be hopefully everything you need to know about radial disc polishers if you want to start using radial discs to polish knives and other things. The other thing I would mention too, for those of you that do engraving, there's a lot of crossover on things that I have used these for in my engraving shop. One of them is when I do little brass or stainless steel engraving plates. Sometimes they show up with a small scratch or something happens to them, or you want to make them shinier or polish them up. These are absolutely amazing for that. I won't go too into detail because I'll save that for another video for that channel. For those of you that do both, that are doing engraving, just know lots of uses for these in the engraving side of the world too. All right, so let's get into radial discs and what you need to know about them. All right, so radial discs, they come in lots and lots and lots of different sizes. I have some big 4-inch ones here on these jewelry buffers. This is a 3-inch, which is just a little bit smaller over here. They have 1-inch ones, and they even have little teeny tiny ones that go down to about a 1/2 inch. Okay, so you can get them in all sorts of different sizes. And that's what this box here is. If you look in here, you'll see there are a variety box of all the different microns and grits and all of the different sizes, and some of them are really tiny. One of the things that's always been a challenge with these is that they also all have different types of mandrels and ways of being connected to things. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see people making would be this one, which is they pick up one of these 6-ply, whether it be 3-inch or whatever size, with a hard plastic outside where it's already together in one unit. Those types of radial discs that come together as one big thing need to be on a mandrel. This is one that it's been a while, but way back I did a video on them, and I showed, and I still have them in my store, where you can get these nice size mandrels where you can fit these on something that you want to use on any type of radial handheld tool. So what are we talking? We're talking Dremels, we're talking Fordham tools, which is usually what I used these bigger ones on. So here's a little bit fatter Dremel. But any of these will work for anything that has its own type of mandrel that you would put it on. Put that on here, and it's ready to go. And you can sit there and buff and do your polishing. Now, when I started out with these years ago, I actually started with the little teeny tiny ones, the 1-inch ones, and to sometimes get better, smoother finishes, I had to stack them together. And there's still plenty of times that I stack them on a small mandrel. So here's a little tiny 1-inch one, right? I will use this often. There are 4 of them on here, and this is the only one that I buy that's not Didedco. When I'm doing finish work for knives, I use the Didedco mandrels. You will see a lot of Chinese knockoffs out there that are really cheap. They do not give you as nice a finish. They actually sometimes make strange little swirly marks in them. I always stick to the name brand, and Didedco is a subsidiary. It was kind of a spin-off company from 3M. So 3M originally manufactured them, and they kind of sold it off to Didedco, who's basically a subsidiary of 3M. The primary use for these things is in the jewelry and the dental industry. These are used for polishing dental implants, plastics, and things like that, although they can be used for metal and wood and all kinds of other stuff. But the only time that I will grab one that is not a Didedco, and here's why. These are expensive, all right? The Didedco brand ones, which work better than anything else when it comes to polishing, are what you want to use if you're doing something, any kind of finishing work, refinishing work, if you're into, refurbishing old knives, which I know some of you guys do. You've seen some of my old refurbishing videos. Or if you're fixing scratches that somebody put into, that you can go back and watch the video I did on a Bark River knife where I refurbished it, and I used mostly jewelry buffers like this and 2-inch ones on my Fordham tools is what I mostly used for that. I don't tend to use the little tiny ones for refurbishing work. I use these more for getting into difficult areas to buff with the bigger polishers. That's why I use the smaller ones, except for 1-inch 80 grit green ones from China. These I use to remove rust from garden tools or rusty stuff, or even if I had a rusty knife, I might start with this and then I would go to all of my Didedco ones for actual polishing. Now, enough said about that. I have plenty of links to these if you want to use them for rust removal. That's the only time I recommend buying the Chinese ones. And I literally don't use any of the other. I have a ton of them. I have a whole box full of them. But it's the only one I use is the green. Because the others seem like, if they're too high a grit, they basically seem like they aren't doing anything, or they make marks in knives that I don't like. So basically, I use the 80 grit and only the 80 grit, and you can buy just the 80 grit. You can get a big supply of these for about 13, 14 bucks. And when it comes to removing rust, these are fantastic. When it comes to polishing, I would not be using these Chinese radial discs. Let's talk about the buffers. Let's go to the jewelry buffer. I figured out early on that the very best way to get a smooth, great finish on a knife that's easy to work on comes out much better using one of these jewelry buffers than it does trying to do it by hand. You can do it by hand, but it's just not as good. And the other thing I had determined was the more radial discs that you can get onto a mandrel, the bigger the stack, the more beautiful and more even that finish ends up being. So one of the things that always annoyed me was that Didedco, they sell little tiny mandrels, and let me tell you what a nightmare it was to even get these things, and they often are sold out, and sometimes they're hard to get. But the other problem with these is they're a pain to put on. A lot of times they want to fly off of the jewelry buffer, and you are limited to how many you can fit on there. So basically, I forget what the exact number is. I'll tell you right here. Let's add one up here. I think it's 13. Okay, I'm trying to count the stack that's on here, but I believe it's 13 come in a pack, whether you buy a 4-inch pack or you buy a 3-inch pack. The problem is I could never get more than maybe 10 or 11 on one of these little mandrels. So I couldn't even fit the entire pack on this little mandrel. Why don't they make a bigger, better mandrel? I was lucky I could even find these. So that's where we got to these mandrels that I started making, which are available on my website for free. If you have a 3D printer, you can go print your own and start using them. The only reason I didn't sell them immediately and right away is because occasionally I was having one break. So we've been working on trying to find what's the very best filament to use to make these mandrels. If you have your own 3D printer, PLA is pretty darn cheap. And to print one of these out, if it breaks and just grab another one is no big deal. It's literally costing you pennies to make one. Here's an example. I printed out, it took me, I think it was 15 hours, but I printed out 20 of these last night, and these are PET G, okay? And then I made the little caps, the screw caps for them using my other new 3D printer just to make sure it's doing good quality, and so far it's been great. Here's the things with the PLA. It's super affordable, as you guys know, if you're into 3D printing. If one breaks, it's no big deal. Just go grab another one. I have had some that I've printed from day one that have never broke, and I've used them multiple times, and they have been completely fine. But I have had 3 or 4 of them that broke. So the reason I didn't want to sell the PLA ones, for those of you that don't have 3D printers and would just rather buy a mandrel, is that I didn't want you to have them breaking and then you'd be like, hey, this thing broke after 3 days of use. So that's why I'm doing the testing, because if you don't know about 3D printing, there are tons and tons and tons and tons of filaments. And they go up in price. They have all different features. Some are soft, some are hard, some are super hard, some are as hard as steel. And that's what I started doing. As I started seeing that some of these would break, I started testing different filaments. Because if I'm going to offer them to you guys, I just don't want them to break easy, because that would be a nightmare for me and a nightmare for you, and it wouldn't be worth your while to buy something that breaks. Like I said, though, if you have your own 3D printer, it probably just cost me pennies to print out the PLA ones. No big deal. One breaks, I throw another one on. Maybe it runs for months before another one breaks, or maybe it never breaks. That was the reason why I'm doing the filament testing. Lots of filaments and lots of different ones to test. Now, here's the good news. The first thing I did was I immediately went out and I got the very best, highest, hardest, strongest filament that Bamboo Labs makes. This is the very strongest, best filament that you can get. It needs to be printed in very specific type of 3D printers. They have to have hardened steel nozzles, which mine does, but this is PPACF. And this is as hard as steel in some circumstances. It's so hard, I can't even cut the filament with a pair of scissors, which I can normally do with PLA. So that tells you how hard this filament is. What's the difference? Well, here's the difference. This roll of filament right here, which was 750 grams of filament, was $140 for this roll. A normal roll of PLA costs about $15. So it is a huge difference in the cost. The reason I'm doing the testing, I'm trying to find what is going to be the best filament for these holding up, not breaking, at a reasonable cost. Now, the next filament down on strength was another one that was similar to that, and it was $75 a roll. For whatever reason, it could not make this. It failed almost every time I tried to print using it. I don't know why. It's one of the only filaments that I've ever have fail on my Bamboo Labs X1 carbon. So that filament is out because it's just not working. So that's where we are with the testing. The PPA CF might be what we have to go with if I'm going to make these available for you guys to buy, because, well, quite frankly, I want to make sure I'm selling something to you that's not going to break real easily. So that's the situation. These are capable of holding 2 stacks of radial discs on there. So this is a double stack of 3-inch radial discs. And these are single stacks of 4-inch radial discs. It also gave me extended room because it still pushed it out a little bit further on the jewelry buffer, and makes polishing a knife very easy, or a lot easier than when I had to use these little mandrels that also left me with 2 or 3 radial discs that were not usable because I couldn't fit them on the mandrel. And I just want to show you this so you can see here. These are individual little discs. All right, so when you guys are asking me, hey, I can't fit it on my jewelry buffer, you have to have a mandrel for it. And if you bought one of these kind that are already hard and they're 6-ply and they're in there, these were not made to go on a jewelry buffer. I don't want to entirely say that. I will tell you this. Let me see. Let's take one of these apart and I'll show you. It's not how I would run it, but it would probably work. All right, so if you bought these, I don't see any reason why you couldn't put it on like this. Just screw it on, be careful. Is that ideal for polishing a knife? It's not ideal, but it will work, okay? The problem is these aren't far enough out from the machine for it to really make it useful for you. If you got this and you still want to be able to use it, one, I would, go pick up some mandrels like this. And what I had to do was, here's the other thing I'll warn you about with the Dedco. You don't want to buy your mandrels from Dedco. I get them on Amazon because they're far cheaper. Okay, Dedco, everything Dedco is a little bit like Tormek. Everything is super expensive. And the only problem I had with this was it came with this little tiny screw. What I did is I basically went out and found a longer screw that would fit in here, and that's how I made this work for me, was simply getting the right screw, putting it into here, and then screwing it in. And I basically built my own mandrel. The only thing I had to do is I had to buy separate screws so that they were long enough, because the ones that came with this mandrel were little tiny and they weren't big enough to fit through this 6-ply and into here. In my list on my website for sharpeners, if you go down to the section all polishing, you will see these mandrels. They are in there. And the screws, I'm pretty sure I still have the link in there. It's been a while since I've looked at them, but I will double check. The screws in there that you need to get so that they will fit should be in there. And, I did even some other things. I even filed some of these down so they weren't sticking out. That's what I did. With some of these, I literally was like making Frankenstein mandrels just to keep from buying one, because I'm not kidding you. Like, go on Dedco, and if you looked at like a mandrel that would fit a Dremel tool for one, they might want like literally $25, where I could go on Amazon, make my own, buy a whole bag of screws, and have like 10 of these for like $9. Way cheaper to take the time and build your own mandrels. It's the other place where a lot of the Chinese ones come in helpful too, is the 1-inch ones that you'll buy often come with these little teeny tiny mandrels. They'll give you 10 of them. And if you're using the 1-inch size, they have the little teeny tiny holes like you see on the typical Dremel stuff. That's what I use. I will not buy those from Dedco. When you buy a Dedco box like this, this one came with 3 mandrels inside, these 3. And literally, I am not kidding you. If you go and look on Dedco and see what these mandrels cost, you will fall over. Like, it's very overpriced in my opinion, the price of these mandrels. So don't even bother. Like, just go look for alternatives. Go look at the ones that I've already sourced out. You don't need to get them from Dedco. If you buy one of these boxes, you're going to get 3 of them. But just know, don't go there shopping for mandrels. It has never been worth it to me to do that. They are very expensive. Also keep in mind, they have some really, really small ones, which are nice to have too. If I have to get into a really tight area, this is a 1/2-inch mandrel, I believe is what this is. No, it's probably 5/8. Yeah, so we're probably, they don't have the metric in here, but it's 5/8, 7/8, and 1 inch. So that small one is 5/8 of an inch. But these are nice to have if you have to get into tight spots or at the bottom of a bolster, or, you know, depending on whatever you're polishing, you know, if it's a handgun, maybe in the trigger guard or trigger area, if you need to do some polishing in really hard to reach areas, that's where these come into play. Very useful. And again, it's pretty much very typical size mandrels that you're going to see on Dremel tools. The good news with the mandrels that I made, the only part we need to print out of the stronger filament is the mandrel. It's totally fine to have a PLA cap or screw on here. In fact, it actually works better, because when I tried making the caps out of the carbon fiber as well, it was actually harder to get on, and these stay on really well. These are also designed to be left and right, and once I start putting these out there, I will laser mark these with left and right. I am going to show you quickly here how they go on. Here's a word of warning with the PLA ones. The only time I have broken one when not in use was over tightening this nut down. And I have been marking these with what direction to go on. I have a laser, and I will laser engrave these, showing which way to turn them. But depending on which side it is, they turn in different directions to tighten and loosen. And it's sometimes the opposite of what you would think, depending on which side of the machine you're on. But these will be marked with little arrows for tighten and loosen. I'll mark the tighten direction, and then all you have to do is put it on there. Now, here's the thing. Here's all you have to do to put these on. This just needs to be snug. It doesn't have to be crazy tight. You just need it snug. What I like to do is I'll tighten it till I see if these are spinning freely, it's not tight enough. I'll just keep tightening it down until these start to get snug. And once they're not spinning around freely, then I know it's tight enough and I'm done. Then I simply take this, I put it on the end here, and then I like to turn the mandrel by hand. And then I hold it still and I tighten it with my fingers. And that's all there is to it. Then I'll check it by turning it on. I don't run these at crazy high speeds. Rarely. I usually run it somewhere around medium speed. The thing with the speed is, the faster you go, the harder it's going to feel, because it starts to compress them together, and it will be a little bit more aggressive. So if you do have something being stubborn, you can up your speed a bit, and you'll see they start to like come together. All right? But generally, I'm running these usually right at about lowest speed, or maybe straight up and down on most of my buffers. If you put it on and it's super wobbly, just take it off, loosen it, and then re-put it back on again. Now, the other thing I do keep around is a pair of just pliers. And it's just so that I can grab this. It makes it a little bit easier. So I'll grab this when I need to take one of these off or make sure it's tight, and then I can just easily take that off. But I can tell you right now, 100%, these are 1,000 times easier to put on and take off than these ones from Dededco. And any of you that have used these can probably vouch for the fact that sometimes you gotta, if you get these from Dededco, I'll just tell you, you gotta push and really turn these to make sure it's on there. And many of you probably have found out the hard way. A lot of times you'll turn it on and your whole stack goes flying across the room if it's not tight. And it's one of the reasons why for such a long time I wanted to get rid of these, and I'm so happy to be rid of them. All right, I have been absolutely loving the new mandrels that I have. They work great. Now, on the far side of my jewelry buffer over here, you'll see I have on this one just a regular cotton buff, which I still use many times. This is what I like to do plastic handles on, and even some polishing if I don't jump on my full-size polisher over there. I will still polish right here. If I want to run all radial discs, I can do 4, and I can put one, over here if I want to as well. They are left and right, so be conscious of that. Make sure you're putting a left one on the left and a right one on the right, and then all you have to do is just kind of tighten it on there hand tight. And that's it. Here's the next question people ask. When they see the price of these things, everybody's like, well, which ones do I really need? If you're just doing general cleanup, you can get away with 220 and 400. That will work super well for most of your Western, your Henkels, your Wusthoffs. I rarely go above these two. When I start getting into Japanese knives or finer grained knives, then I will many times go to the 1 micron. I own every one. Do you have to get them? I would say if you're doing refurbishing work, if you're doing, restoration, restoring, refurbishing stuff, then you're probably gonna want to have all of them. It is very helpful to have the full set. So this is an 80, the yellow's an 80. Then there's a white. This is 120. Then you go to 220. Then 400, which is the blue. Then we go to 6 micron, which is this kind of salmon colored pink. And then 1 micron. But if you're just starting out, I would say go with 2 or the 3 combination here. 220, 400, 1 micron if you want to go to kind of shiny polishing stuff. Otherwise, I would definitely say 220, 400, and you will be really good with that because you can do any more buffing you can do with your cotton wheel and buffs and other things that are going to come with your jewelry buffer. The next question I'm sure is going to be, Paul, do I get the 4-inch or the 3-inch? I prefer the 4-inch. It's easier to use. It's further away from the machine. When you're doing big knives, this works easier. For a long time, the 4-inch didn't even exist. So for a lot of years, I used 3-inch. That's why I have so many of them, and also why I have double stacks of the 3-inch, because I used a lot of them. So you can get by with the 3-inch. These are better, but these are still really good. Also, keep in mind, they seem expensive, I know. A pack is $50 for 4-inch, and a pack of 3-inch is around $37, I believe, might be the current price. Usually in that range, somewhere around $35, $37 for a pack of 3-inch. I have never had one of these not last me 2 years or more. If you're using them properly, they will last you a very long time. It might seem like a lot, yes, at $50 for a pack of these, but keep in mind, as long as you don't abuse them, as long as you don't do something stupid like put your knife into it edge leading and cut your teeth off, as long as you don't over push, let the tool do the work, okay? Whenever I'm polishing, I am very lightly touching on here. Light. Let the machine do the work. You don't have to push really hard into here. Look at it. Look at it already getting shiny. Let me show you this. Look at this. Okay, I'm very lightly touching this. Look at that. You see that? Okay? I'm barely touching it. I'm letting the tool do the work. If you push really hard on a radial disc, you're gonna wear them out quicker. And I've had guys that are like, oh, I wore my radial disc out in a month. They were pushing incredibly hard. and you don't have to push that hard. Do not push hard. If it's not doing enough, up your speed a little bit, let it work faster and a little stiffer, but still use that light touch. Don't push hard, otherwise you will wear your radial discs out long before their time. They should last a really long time. If they seem like they're wearing down really fast, you're pushing too hard. So I hope that helps you guys out. I hope that straightens out some of the mystery behind how they get connected. And I'll keep you appraised as to what's going on. I do have a couple people testing these for me right now. And then the other thing you might want to consider, and we can get into that on another day, is, you can pick up a 3D printer for about $350. You don't have to go like my X1 Carbon that I got. You can get some very affordable 3D printers. Start making them yourselves. Now, I know that might seem excessive even for, I just want to print a mandrel. Do you want to spend $300 to be able to print your own mandrels? I get it. I can guarantee you're going to find lots of other cool things to print. You absolutely are. I have printed so many things for the shop, for my lasers, that I've lost track of how many things I did. Now, as a teaser, I'm going to show you one more that I'm working on right now for you, and that's these. And this is a 3D printed angle guide for Tulker and Vivors. I just have to find what's going to be the best way to attach these. I think these are going to be really great too. If you're like me, I'm using pretty much a fixed angle most of the time. So I usually have this machine set to 17 and the other one set to 15. These can be made in any sizes, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, all the way up. And I'm looking to figure out the best way to be able to attach this to a Tulker or Vivor style. And I'll show you. I think it's going to require drilling a hole into the platen, but this is made to fit this size platen. And this gets in the way of almost nothing because it is just a tiny bit bigger on the one side than the other. So it is a better fit than any of the other buckle guides. It's just a matter of perfecting an attachment way for this. And we will get there. I am sure of it. Once I get it figured out, again, this is going to be another thing that I will put out there for you. If you have your own 3D printer, feel free to make your own. And then if, depending on how well it goes, I'll try and source whatever parts, whatever things we might need. It should be fairly simple. And then we will probably have a way to screw in a wing nut or something on the back side of this just to hold this in place. The nice thing about these, it's just like the one that I made, my 2x42, which this whole top here is PLA. I never have to put tape on here. The PLA does not scratch knives. You don't have to put tape down. It's nice and smooth. Everything runs across it really well. That's going to be the same case with these, is that these little angle guides are going to be a real joy to work with. We will see how this goes, but that is the other thing that I am working on, guys. I got a bunch of ideas for you. Multiple options out there. So we got the regular buckle guides that we can get on Amazon. Better plate for those that you can get through Cliff Curry. The KFMK new angle guides, which are just awesome. And then as another option, just in case, these things tend to keep selling out and stuff, or if you want to look for just something completely different, I'm going to be working on getting these perfected so that you have a third option, which will give you 3 ways to have an angle guide for any one of your sharpening machines. And that's it for now, guys. I hope that helps some of you out, and I will talk to you all soon. One other reminder, in every video I put links in the description, and I think some of you guys don't see the links or always hear the stuff that I'm saying. I keep a master list of things that I use on my website, and they're links to Amazon links where you can go and find that exact product. That's always in the description area. Still to this day, many people, even though it's in the channel trailer and I mention it all the time, will ask me, Paul, where do I get this? Where do I get that? Every one of the things that I showed in the radial disc today are on that list. You just have to scroll down. Now, I will warn you, if you're on a phone, you're going to have to look for that where it says more part. And since it's a regular like web store, you might have to scroll for a long time. It's absolutely a more enjoyable shopping experience and looking for all that stuff if you go to a regular computer or something bigger like an iPad or something. It's easier to see all that stuff than it is on your phone. And I know so many of us do stuff on the phone. I've tried to optimize it the best I can for that, but don't forget to look in the description. The links are usually there before you send me a message asking, hey, where is this or where can I find that? Unless you can't find it. If it's not in that store there, sometimes I forget to put things in, sometimes I miss something, or sometimes I didn't get it through Amazon. I would say 95% of the stuff I buy comes from Amazon, and maybe 5% of it doesn't. And if it's one of those things, I will try and get you the proper link to wherever that came from. So that's it, but just be sure, look at those things. They're usually there, and that's why I put them in there, and I go through the effort of putting the links in there. So try and look there first before you send me a message or post that you can't find stuff. Also remember, things do occasionally sell out, or if something in a link doesn't seem correct or it's not getting the right product, feel free to send me a message saying, hey, this isn't going to that anymore. With a lot of links and a lot of different things that we use, it is hard to keep up on all of them when you're a one-man show. So feel free to send a message if you're not seeing what it is that you're looking for. But at least please go look in those areas first if you're looking for something that I've mentioned. And that's it. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.